City of Coeur d'Alene Planning Commission meeting, Tuesday, August 12th, 2014. Would you please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please, anyone in the audience, if you can't hear us, please let us know, because we want to make sure we're heard. Sometimes we don't speak through the microphones, so don't feel bad and say, please speak up. We do have two new members, and I wanted to introduce them, and then we'll go through the agenda. Lori Burchett, she's a new planner here for the City of Coeur d'Alene. And we also have Christian Cousins. He's a representative from the high school, Lake City High School. So, Shanna, could you give us roll call, please?
Jordan? Bowlby?
Here.
Ingalls?
Here.
Lutrip?
Here.
Messina? Ward?
Here.
O'Brien? Cousins?
Here.
Next on the agenda will be approval of minutes.
Madam Chair, one of my three questions has to do with the minutes. If I may, in the minutes for the workshop, item 5, the Deputy City Attorney explained the Supreme Court changed the code in some fashion, and I can't recall whether this was advice only to us or whether there's a change in procedure and use of the comp plan.
Let me speak to that. So that we had a brief discussion about the change in our subdivision ordinance that was recently adopted by the City Council, and we talked about in the past where there had been a finding of consistency with the comprehensive plan for subdivisions, that finding had been removed based on guidance from the Supreme Court. So that's what that blurb is speaking to.
Well, I guess that's why I'm confused, because the Supreme Court said solely, you can't solely rely on the comprehensive plan, and we rely on things much broader than just the comprehensive plan. That's the plan, and I assumed it was preponderance of evidence as viewed by each one of us as how we would vote. I thought you had said that the Supreme Court said you cannot solely rely.
You can't deny it on that basis. So, as we discussed, that's the reason it's not in there anymore, that and a change in the state statute that you also have to clearly enunciate the approval criteria, and they have to be essentially an ascertainable standard. And so based on those two things, that's the reason for the change. It's been adopted by council. As we discussed, we'll try it out for a while, see how it works, and if it's not working as the way that you would like to see it working, we can revisit it.
So that essentially means our comprehensive plan is null and void?
No. As we've discussed, the comprehensive plan, the purpose of a comprehensive plan is to guide the implementation of your ordinance. So you're developing ordinances based on your comprehensive plan. When it comes to subdivisions, where it's a fairly cut and dry, straightforward application, and in those instances, your comprehensive plan, the role that the comprehensive plan plays is guiding the development of your ordinances, which we've done through our zoning code and our subdivision code. In other instances, like a zone change or a PUD, which is a sort of a custom zone, you're determining the appropriateness of that new zone against the comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan still has roles to play. It'll still be part of our hearing processes, especially in zone changes, PUDs, which are like a zone change, and it's more in subdivisions that you're not going to see it in a hearing item. But it still will play a role in guiding the development of new ordinances.
So it's just in subdivision matters that come before.
At this point, I mean, we're going to have to revisit our other findings in the near future. I don't see it completely going away in those other contexts because, like I said, for zoning, it has to be in there. PUDs, I think it has to be a consideration. And those are the bulk of the hearings that we do. We do occasional special use permits. We'll talk about those. We rarely, if ever, see variances, so that's really not as big a deal. So that's where we will go.
Thank you.
Motion to approve the minutes from the workshop?
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Engels, seconded by Lutrip. And we do have another set of minutes that we need to have approval.
Move approval of the July 8th minutes.
They're the July 8th, 2014 meeting.
This is in addition to that, so we can vote on both motions at the same time.
We can.
Okay.
Second.
All right. So again, motion by Lutrip, second by Engels on that one. Thank you.
So I vote yes.
Good. Okay, so on the agenda, we do have
You need to have
public.
you've got a motion, you need to have a vote.
Oh, that's true, sorry. So can they vote on both at the same
Sure.
time? All right. Roll call, please. Thank you. Keep me straight.
It can be a voice vote, it's just,
Okay, is it a yay or a nay? Both,
Yay.
yay? All right. Okay, thank you. I'm a little rusty. I haven't been a chairperson for a while, so bear with me, but I'll as the night goes on, it'll only get better. So,
Madam Chair, there's none of us here that I could think that would like to be a chair. You're doing an excellent job.
thank you. No, it'll be
Second.
fine.
Don't ever worry about that.
So now we're on to the agenda on public comments. And what I mean by public comments would be anything other than what we're discussing tonight. If anyone in the public has anything that they would like to come up and state or comment on, you're more than welcome to do that at this moment. Since there are no individuals that would like to do that, we will go to the staff comments.
I would just like to mention that we will have a September meeting next month. We have 2 special use permits on the agenda.
Okay, and Commissioner Lutrip, did you have
Yes,
a
I had one
comment?
other question. I just wonder if the staff could find out at a time certain when that tower is going to be, that excess tower on Sherman and East Coeur d'Alene Lake Drive, I guess, will be down. As I recall, when we approved the new tower, that that the second tower was the original tower was going to be removed because it was what was going to be removed.
That's on Sherman Avenue, the one that's, yeah.
Right. So if you could find, just come back, it doesn't have to be by, just so I have some idea, so when people ask, I say, yeah, it's going to be down, but not later than, whenever that may be.
Correct. There was a condition that be removed 1 year after, I believe, the
It was a condition
CO
1 year?
or the approval of the other one once it was completed. I will look into that and make sure that I get you a date.
Thank you very much.
We're coming up to almost a year, I think, with that. Pretty close, I bet. Yeah, it's real close. Okay.
so I also wanted to let you know that we are currently advertising for a new planning director. We've been out for about a week. That position closes on the 22nd of this month. We're hoping to get lots of good qualified applicants, and we'll begin a process to review those and do interviews shortly thereafter.
Okay. Now, we do have some written correspondence here before we go into the public hearings. So if the commissioners need to read that, I can inform the public on how, if you want to speak for any of these public hearings, make sure that you have signed the correct public hearing, and let me know if you want to speak. And if you do want to speak, I will check you off and call your name. These are both quasi-judicial hearings, and I will need to swear you in and get your full name and address. I think we're still doing address, is that correct? No, just name. All right. Just your full name, and then you'll have 5 minutes that you can go pro or con on the request that's up, that we're talking about. Also, the applicant, we're up to 30 minutes for each applicant, and they'll have that time before you're able to make your comments, and then they'll be also able to come back up and have a rebuttal. So just to give you a feeling of how the procedures are while they're finishing up their reading, please come up and speak. That is what this is all about. So we have 2 public hearings, and one is one on Fruitland Lane, and the second is Summit Cider Company on Schreiber Way. And we will start with public hearing number 1. Thank you, and I do have the sign up. And that is Ray Harding, applicant. The location is 3615 North Fruitland Lane, and it is a request for a proposed zone change from R12, residential 12 units per acre, to R17, residential at 17 units per acre, zoning district. And this, again, is a quasi-judicial hearing. So we'll hear from staff on the proposal.
Before we get started, we need to poll the commission to make sure there's no ex parte contacts.
Oh, excuse me, yes.
Site visits to disclose.
Did we have any commissioners that are closely related to this, or any visiting, or any ex parte? Thank you. Thank you, Warren.
Tonight, we have a zone change request from R12 to R17 for approximately 1.75 acres. The subject property is located right up here, as you can see outlined in yellow. It is between North Fruitland Lane and North Howard Street, just south of Clady Lane. The site is currently vacant. These are the findings that must be made by Planning Commission for approval or denial of a request. And with that, the first one is that whether or not the request is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. So as you can see, this area falls within the Fruitland land use area. It is in transition. The definition of transition is right over here. The black outline denotes that boundary. And within your guys' staff report, you can see the Fruitland Tomorrow description that is from the comprehensive plan. The second finding is whether or not the public facilities and utilities are available and adequate for the proposed use. Within your guys' staff report, there are comments from stormwater, street, water, sewer, and fire. Suffice it to say that the utilities and facilities are available to the site. The physical characteristics of the site make it or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. Physical characteristics of the site, as you can see here, the subject property is generally flat. There are adjacent uses both to the north and the south of this property, and which makes it suitable for the request. And last but not least is whether or not the proposal would adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and or existing land uses. Once again, you can see the comments for traffic in Fruitland today that are found in your staff report. Also, there was a conceptual site plan that was placed inside of your staff report. Here is a rough idea of what the applicants have in mind for the property. Also be aware that with the zone change request, we do not place conditions on a zone change request so that they have to follow a site plan. Planning Commission must be comfortable that any one of those uses in R17 could possibly happen on the site. Generalized land use pattern of the area. As you can see, the subject property is vacant. There is a number of mobile home parks that are located nearby, as well as single-family attached and detached, and civic uses that are adjacent. There's a number of uses in the area. The zoning of the area, as you can see, this is currently zoned R12. To the south is MH8, to the north is R12 and MH8. Kitty corner to the northwest, there is a PUD, it's R17 PUD, that is Meadow Ranch. And across the way here as well is MH8 and manufacturing directly west of the property. This is the recap of the 4 findings that must be made for a zone change request. There were 2 recommended conditions by engineering. Those are in your staff report as well. And Planning Commission must consider this zone change request to make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And your findings worksheet is attached. With that, that's the end of my staff report. Is there any questions?
Go ahead, Mr. Chair Engel. Commissioner Engel.
Sean, just a clarification again. I think I understood you well, but as a still kind of a newcomer here, just want to understand for sure. We see a conceptual plan, and sometimes we might look at that and go, hey, that looks good, or it doesn't look good, or we like it, or we don't, or whatnot. And it's really of illustration value, I think you're saying. It's not locked in. And for that matter, this shows a number of what would be rental units here. I think the narrative says senior housing or something like that. But once this, say, were approved from R12 to R17, any of those additional uses in R17 could go forth by right and by permit, and then that plan is it's not locked in at all.
Correct. As noted here, the R17 does allow some additional uses other than R12. The largest one, or the one that staff would like to mention, is an increase in density from 12 units to 17 units per acre. If you notice on page 8 of the staff report, I did provide you the total overall maximum theoretical density for the site would be 32 units, which would be 1 unit per 2,500 square feet. That is theoretical, obviously. If they have to provide parking, they'll have to provide access. Some of those things do eat up the available property on the site, so it's tough to say exactly how many units would go on site.
John, could you go back to the zoning map, the colored one you have there? All right, so on that map, are there any R17s there currently?
R17 PUD, which is located directly to the northwest. This is also R17 here. This is where Golden Corral currently sits in the new Buffalo Wild Wings. If you remember back, it's been a little bit of time, about a year ago, I would say, that there was a special use permit for commercial parking on this portion of property that was approved for the Golden Corral.
Well, my concern was this. If this is close to other R17 zoned, and I guess it's just across the street from a R17 PUD.
Correct.
Now, if I recall correctly, what John was talking about, we have some schematic here, conceptual site plan, and if this is approved, the property can change hands, and whatever the zoning calls for, they can do. In here, they talk about neighborhood character, about sidewalks and bicycle paths and so forth. If we approve the zoning, can we make it contingent upon something like that? Or does that have to go all by the wayside too?
Those issues are almost entirely handled at the building permit time. And if they come back for a subdivision or something such as that. But when they apply for permit, that's when staff gets a chance to review those improvements.
So if we had some comments on there that we like this is the community's favorite tree or favorite bike path or whatnot, that could be part of the ultimate building permit?
I don't think you can condition that. I'd have to refer to the legal department of whether or not you can condition a tree removal or not.
That becomes fairly difficult in this scenario.
Okay.
This is really just a zone change. It's changing essentially the allowed uses rather than what the development is going to be on the site. So that,
So the schematic is conceptual, as is,
Yeah.
okay, very good, thank you.
it's a demonstration of what could be done, not necessarily what will be done.
Okay.
And
I'd
for
like
the
to ask-
commission, oh, go ahead.
I'd like to ask one quick question, too. Regarding the principal permitted uses between the R12 and the R17, of course, there is the permitted uses by the special use. So in that, if this conceptual design were to ever change and came back, like you said, during like the building permit process, at that time, would that be the time for the special use permit to be applied for? Would that be prior to?
So the permitted uses by right are ones that they can do without
Without the special use.
special permission. They don't have to come back. So those ones, the permitted uses that are listed there under R12 and R17 can happen without special approval. If they need something such as a boarding house, commercial film production, or something like that, they would come back to commission to ask for those.
Prior to then a building permit process?
Correct. Well, it depends on if, in general, if there was already something on the site, like a building, and they wanted to change the use of that building, they wouldn't necessarily need a building permit, but they would need to ask for permission.
In this case, since it's vacant land, they would have to go through that step
Correct.
first, more than likely. Okay, thank you.
And I was going to mention that I asked the applicant for a conceptual site plan to show you something that they were interested in doing. In times past, I know that council as well as planning commission have frowned upon zone changes with no idea in mind. You know, it's something that was purely speculative, that they really did have something in line for the property in the future.
But still, that doesn't require them to do that.
Correct.
So if we wanted to have something firm, it would be then through like the adjacent property or through a PUD process.
Yes, or some sort of conditional zoning. The city does not do conditional zoning at this time.
Well, then, so it would have to be the PUD process.
The PUD can tie someone, or a special use permit can tie someone to a site plan.
Do we have any other comments? Thanks, Warren.
Welcome.
I'm sorry. See, I knew I would do that. Thank you, Sean. Now it is time for the applicant. And I'll swear you in. Let's see, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
I do.
All right, and just state your name.
Ray Harding.
Okay, Ray, you may proceed.
I presented this conceptual plan so that this would give you a visual of what we're trying to accomplish in your community. Are we able to go back to the,
Sure. Use the scroll wheel right now.
let's go back, here we go. All right, the property is approximately 130 feet wide by about 600 and some change in depth. And the two streets that run tangent with this piece of property is Fruitland on one side and Howard on the other. And the intent is to make sure that we have ingress, egress, so that we can get emergency vehicles in and out of there. We've also looked at maybe we want to subdivide it directly down the middle so that we meet those requirements. We're looking at, apartments that would range anywhere from about 850, 100 square feet for senior citizens, 55, 65 on up. By the time you look at the density, you look at how many square feet, I gave you the square footage so that it's a little bit more clear in your mind that when I say 1.75 acres, that doesn't mean a lot to anybody. But if you start thinking about 130 feet wide, well, some people's homes here in town the lot will be 100 feet wide. So this happens to be about 6 feet deep. And anyway, our proposal is to manage the soil, manage the trees, manage whatever we can save to make this aesthetically pleasing. The comprehensive plan, we meet all of the requirements surrounding us. I mean, you've got mobile homes, you've got, and I know some of these homes that have been taken down recently were built in the 40s and the 50s. And what we're trying to do is we're just trying to update and look at the transition and meet the needs of this community, because when you start looking at what the needs are of this community, there is a housing need for seniors that are on a fixed income. When you look at the convenience of how they can just walk to places, when you look at medical facilities and pharmaceutical facilities, when you look at that and you recognize, too, that the parks, the schools are so close for the families that have got some grandchildren. Half a mile away from one school, about 3/4 of a mile away from the high school. So it's a convenient location, and it makes sense because we are surrounded by a whole host of either commercial properties, and there's some LM zoning in there too, which is some of the limited manufacturing going on in that area. So you've got a quarry just on the back side of us, which would be the west side. Then on the east side, which is Highway 95, you've just got a whole host of areas that have been improved over the last 10 years, and that transition is going north. It's heading towards Hayden. And so this just makes a lot of sense for us to be able to create this. And again, we have to meet, and I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but we have to meet the density. We have to have X number of vehicles to be able to park in there. We have utilities that are there underground. We have a whole host of we have a team of engineers, architects that are working with us right now that are telling us what we can and cannot do. So, yeah, we're just, I'm hoping that you'll look at this and see that there is a need for this in this community here. And if you guys have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them at this time.
Commissioners, go ahead. Ingles?
What is it
Fripp?
that you can accomplish, you want to accomplish under R-17 that you can't accomplish under its current zoning?
Well, there's a couple things. Number one, we could put some duplexes in there, but then it doesn't make a financial sense. That's number one. Number two, we'd like to maximize the piece of property that we buy. It's kind of like, you're on a budget, you try and maximize your dollars. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to maximize, we're trying to make something that is affordable. We're trying to create and develop a piece of property that is going to meet the needs of the community. I've done some history. I've looked at this property, and over the last 10 years, 12 years, there have been some proposals of putting some different building projects in there. This makes a lot of sense. And again, we will stick as close to this as we possibly can. I know this is a concept, and I heard you guys asking, could this be changed? The reason it would be changed is if during the planning stages, one of the underground utility people tells us that, hey, you got to have a hydrant, which we do at 300 feet, which is about approximately halfway into the property. Now, if for some reason that hydrant is placed in the way of one of the buildings, and the planning department tells us we can't do that, then we're looking at making some modifications. Right now, this is pretty much what we're looking at trying to accomplish. I hope that answers your...
Oh, no, one of my issues is that the R-17, it's just sitting there by itself. It's surrounded by lesser density.
Yeah, and what the engineers do with that, They take a look at how many square feet you have. They look at per unit. It's about 2,500 square feet per unit. So when you start looking at, and when you start doing the math calculations on that, that puts us, at 2930. It'd be nice if it was an R17 where you could actually do 217 units and get 34, but the square footage doesn't allow us to do that. And again, it's a single floor, it's a rancher style, and which accommodates the seniors again.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Ingles.
Yes, sir. Reading your narrative, I had a question. You indicate that this is an affordable housing project, correct?
Yes.
And I just wanted to understand if this was a tax credit kind of public participation type project. Is there anything that guarantees going forward that this would remain a affordable housing project for seniors?
That is that's our direction. We don't have, there isn't any tax credits, there isn't any loan institution credits, there's nothing on the table. We haven't even seeked anything like that.
So this increase in density allows you to deliver a more affordable project, you're saying, because the density allows it to pencil better and provide units at a lower rate, though?
Exactly. Yeah, we're trying to, again, we're hoping that seniors that are on a fixed income, Social Security fixed incomes.
So I guess a little bit of a struggle I have with this. And I wish that we could lock in a plan, and we can't, even if I like that and believe that senior housing fits there. The concern I have a little bit is that it opens the door by going to R17 to a host of other allowable uses, and,
the land doesn't allow us to go any higher than 2 15-unit complexes. That's because of the square footage available. And you got to factor in, you've got to have that road punched in, you got to have parking, you have to have X number of square footage for landscaping. Those are all of the planning department's regulations that we have to meet.
John, were you thinking in terms of all the other forms that R17 brings upon, not this particular project? Is that what you were implying?
Seeing this plan, if it delivered affordable housing, if it delivered, guaranteed affordability going forward for seniors, I think it'd be great. And seeing that plan, and if it was a public participation tax credit type project where there was a guarantee of seniors living in affordable homes going forward, even though it means more density, and if we could lock that plan in, I'd say yes so fast. The concern is that, that could be approved. You sell a lot, somebody else comes in and puts a huge child care center or, any other those other uses on there at that higher density. That's a concern.
It has to meet the zoning requirements. For somebody to come in and put a child daycare center in there, it has to meet a commercial zoning.
Well, it's all depending upon what you can do in an R17. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, under the, thank you, proposed R17 zoning district, I did a quick comparison, and two that stick out are the child care facilities, which are permitted under the R17, as well as the community education. Those are the two additional that stand out outside of the density of the R8 versus R12 versus R17, for instance.
By right.
By right. By right. Therefore, approving this would allow them to bring in a child care or community education facility without having to go through a special conditional use type permit process. Is that do I understand correctly as you do?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments? If there are no more comments from the applicant, then we can go to the public, and you'll be able to come back for a rebuttal.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a list here. Please, if I don't say your name correctly, you can correct me when you come up. Marcine, is it Royal or Doyle?
Doyle,
And do you wish to speak?
I think my questions have been answered at this time.
Okay, all right. And then I have Edie Keith. Or Eddie Keith? Oh, would you like to come up and speak as you had, I have it as Edie. All right.
It's Eddie.
Eddie.
Not Edie.
Okay.
If you're wondering who was standing up here beside Ray,
And Eddie, I'll need to swear you in again.
Again?
Do you
Sure.
swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
I do.
All right, you may proceed.
I'm the proud landowner of that lot. And actually, I just want to say this is actually a fulfillment of a dream. I've owned this lot for about 8 years. And the concept that Ray has put forth here is basically, like I said, a fulfillment of my dream. And that is because I've been involved in this community for 23, 24 years now. And there is a need for affordable senior housing. And the reason I enjoy the location of this lot is because one could live there. Freddie Meyer is just north by about 150 yards. A professional baseball player can throw a baseball from that lot into the Freddie Meyer parking lot. You have virtually everything that a senior citizen would need. And this is what's so nice and unique about this property, is they can walk. They don't need to drive. They can walk to whatever they need in any direction. And it's just, I just think it's fantastic, and it's a real positive thing that the community needs. And anyway, I just came up here, and I just wanted to make comments if there were any questions that anybody may have concerning this lot and what's going to go on there.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, Eddie.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for letting me talk.
And the next person is Ray Harding. Would you like to speak? You're in favor?
That was me.
Oh, my gosh. You're right, Ray.
Yeah.
You've already been up here. All right. Sarah Ratliff, is that correct? Neutral? Would you like to speak?
No,
Okay. And I think it's Aaron and Janie Cash, or would you like to speak? Okay. And I'll swear you in. I assume you're Aaron.
Yes, I'm
All right.
Aaron Curdy.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
Yes.
All right. Would you state your name, please?
Aaron Curdy.
All right. Go ahead, Aaron.
Hey, can I go back on some slides on this?
Sure. Use the scroll and go forward and back.
Okay, I just want to really just point out one thing. I'm with Providence Property Management, and we actually manage the condo complex north of this empty lot. We have 20 units in there, and it's the same size. And I mean, our biggest problem is parking. You know, there's just no parking for everybody. So I don't know how they're going to do it with that. I mean, it'd be great if they could, but I just don't see how they're going to squeeze that many parking spots in there. So that's really the only concern I have.
Okay.
So just kind of
All
want
right.
to point
Thank
that
you.
out. Thank you.
Do I have anyone else that would like to speak that did not sign up? All right, so now, Ray, you are the applicant. You may come back and give us your rebuttal.
So I'm rebutting the parking issue?
You can just speak to what you heard and,
Okay. I can assure you that according to the density that's available to us and the lot size, the apartments and the landscaping and the ingress and egress, we are well within all of the requirements that the city planning department has made. I have a team of engineers and architects that have looked at this very closely, and they have placed strategically in this conceptual plan, and we have met those standards. So,
Well, Ray, I have a question. So when I was looking at the way it's laid out, is each unit, you said it was 100 square feet?
800.
Oh, good. I thought I heard 100, and I thought, that's awfully small. But 800
I have
square feet.
playhouses bigger than
yes.
that.
800 square feet and two parking? It
Yeah,
looked as
it's,
if you had two?
I'd have to get a little clarification on that. I think it's 1.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just what I had to clarify that because I didn't think I heard that correctly. But, okay. Anyone else have a comment, Commissioner? Any
I
comments?
don't have any question. I've got comments on the item
Okay.
for our discussion.
All right.
Again, I'd
Okay.
like to thank you guys for your time, and I know that past history, a lot of builders haven't done what I've done, is brought in a conceptual plan for everybody to review. And so I hope this was helpful, that everybody has a visual, a clear visual of what it is we're trying to accomplish. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Mr. Harding. Thank you. All right, so now we have a discussion with the commissioners and in need to have a finding thereafter.
Well, I certainly agree with the concept of affordable senior housing, although I'm not so sure that's a defined term. And a lot of things can happen once the zoning changes, primarily through the property changing hands and so forth, and that zoning runs with it. I have no question that Mr. Harding would do what he says he will do, but it can move out of his hands. And to act on this because it's affordable senior housing, I don't think we can. I can't do that in all good conscience because it's just not defined. It's up to the eye of the beholder, in the eye of the beholder. Now you look right across and you got a PUD there, and there is some control in that if one wanted to. And I'm not suggesting you do, but that one of my issues is the affordable housing. It's not guaranteed. And the second issue is that this zoning increase is a substantial increase relative to the adjacent properties. And I just think it's, in time, it very well may get that way. But I don't think it's appropriate for us to take in the heart of a area like that and increase the zoning from 12 to 17. So that's my current feeling.
Thank you, Commissioner Lutrip. Do we have any other comments? Do we have anyone who would like to make the findings?
Commissioner Bobley, if I could for a second, I want to speak a little bit about how you make your decisions.
Okay.
Recall, your decisions need to be based on the record that's been created tonight at the hearing. Your record is fairly limited tonight. You have the information that's in your staff report and then the testimony that you've heard tonight. The testimony that you've heard, if I've heard it all correctly, was largely from the applicant. You had one neutral comment concerned about the potential for parking. Parking's driven by our city code, so regardless of what he proposes, he has to meet our code requirements. So there's really not much negative information there in which to base a denial in the testimony. So if you're looking at a denial, you need to base it on information in the staff report, and you need to think about, and this is frankly where the comprehensive plan comes in, is your zoning decisions should be based largely on what your comprehensive plan says. These are the types of uses, these are the types of things that we want to see in this area. So you should focus in on what the comprehensive plan tells you, and as well as the information that you have before you tonight, and base the decision on that record. That's the only information that we can consider tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Warren.
There's not, it's not part of the testimony that the zoning map right there, and doesn't that speak to our comprehensive plan about transitions and zoning that is, I guess I could go through some of those things, but it would seem to me that we have enough data in front of us.
So again, you would have to articulate coming out of the comprehensive plan, out of the information in your staff report, what it is about this that is problematic. What is it in the comprehensive plan that says this is not the type of use that we want to see? You need to be able to articulate those reasons, because, again, it needs to be in the record. There's not much testimony tonight that's going to get you there if that's the direction you want to go. You would have to look at information in your staff report.
Commissioner Engel?
So, Warren, for example, as I went through the staff report and read on page 3, the characteristics of Fruitland neighborhoods would be an overall density that would approach 8 residential units per acre, and that's kind of an overall density, granted. But that's where maybe I had some concern here, where there may or may not be compatibility with the project to the north and the 8 units per acre to the south. That would be a valid concern.
It could be. I mean, you have to articulate those reasons, recognizing that the R12 zoning density that you have now is already over that 8 threshold. That 8 is really an area-wide number. It's not essentially property-specific. So that's one part of the calculus that you'd want to consider. So if you can articulate the reason, I think you're focusing in on the right elements. I zeroed in on the comprehensive plan largely because the other elements of your staff report are largely supportive. Essentially, the utilities, everything else is there. So if that's where you want to go, that's the type of thinking that you need to be having.
Well, I'll no. It would seem to me that under Objective 301, managed growth in neighborhoods, that suitable housing forms within existing neighborhoods, and I think changing this would be out of character of the existing neighborhood, and it would be incompatible with uses of the area by there. But anyway, you know what my feelings are, and but I don't make motions because I find they're too complex for this little mind to figure out.
Commissioner Ingalls?
I would take a shot at a motion in the form of the findings.
Okay.
So the motion would be for denial, and the motion would be based on the following findings. In order that this matter has come before the Planning Commission on August 12th, and there's been present a person requesting approval of Zone Change 3-14, a request for a zone change from R12 residential at 12 units per acre to R17 residential at 17 units per acre zoning district. Applicant is Ray Harding. Location is a parcel of 1.75 plus or minus acre parcel between Fruitland Lane and Howard Street, south of Claddy Lane, Track 54 of Fruitland Lane's addition to Coeur Lane. As findings, adopt findings B1 through B7 that are in the packet on page 1. And B8, finding that this proposal is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan policies that Commissioner Luthrop touched on a little bit, and I would expand and say 3.01, 3.05, 3.06, and 3.07, that, this pocket, if you will, of R17 would not be in sync with the surrounding zoning, and based on the comp plan, that the desirability of the Fruitland Lane area, which it underscores, should be developed with care, and that the overall density should approach 8 units per acre. So Granted, 12 units per acre is more than the 8 already, but, 17 would push that maximum too much and would open the door to some uses that may not be in character with the neighborhoods as defined in 3.01, 05, 06, and 07. To continue, public facilities are available. The physical characteristics do make it suitable to develop. However, B11, that the proposal would adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regards to density and traffic, primarily neighborhood character. And opens the door for other types of uses allowed. So the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that the request of Ray Harding for a zone change as described in the applicant should be denied.
Do you want it denied or denied without prejudice? And the difference being, Warren, if we do,
A denial requires a year waiting period before the exact application can be brought back. Denial without prejudice doesn't have that year-long waiting period. It also opens up some possibilities of some fee waivers for a resubmittal. That's pretty rare.
Denied without prejudice.
do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Ward. And is there any further discussion? And do we need a roll call on
Roll
that?
call.
Yes, roll call, please. Shanna?
Ingalls?
Yes.
Lutrip?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
And Warren, could you explain to the applicant more or less what their procedure could be to, if they wanted to reapply, not necessarily for an R17 zone change, but if they wanted to come in and do something on that property, is there any way that they can proceed in any fashion?
Sure. Recall that this is a zoning action. Zoning actions are made by the city council, so this matter is going to go to city council
Correct.
with your recommendation that it not be approved. So we've got that step to go through. We can certainly talk with the applicant about alternatives at any time that they want to talk to us. We're
Okay, so you have,
our number. We've been talking with them.
so we have the opportunity to go to the city council and the public also to know that they will proceed to the city council, and that's the process that we're able to go through. But thank you, and we will continue on to our next item. And Sean, go ahead. You'll let us know about Summit Cider Company, another quasi-judicial hearing.
Actually, Lori has decided to.
Oh, good. Yay, Lori. Well, welcome again. I did introduce you, but I don't know if they got a face to your introduction, so welcome. Thank you, Lori.
Okay. The project that you have before you today is an application for a special use permit to sell retail cider from a business both on and off-site in conjunction with manufacturing use of producing that cider. And that manufacturing use is allowed by right in the manufacturing zoning district. To take you through the property, this is a view from Schreiber Way. Schreiber does a loop from Kathleen, so that's kind of the general vicinity that we're located in. And the project would be located in the southeast corner there of that existing facility in the manufacturing district. And there will be two uses within this facility. One of the uses is the manufacturing that is permitted outright in the manufacturing district, and that would be for producing their cider beverage. And the area of proposed uses for the food and beverage sales are what we're looking at with the special use permit. And this would allow for on and off-site consumption so that they can also sell and distribute their product that way. People can come in and taste their product and then also can go away with their product. And for this action tonight, we have three findings that we're going to look at. for the Planning Commission to make a decision and based on those findings. First is whether the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And this particular use is in our stable established area within our comprehensive plan in the Ramsey Woodland area. And the stable established is that the character has already been established in the area and should be maintained as such. If we look at this area today, the Ramsey Woodland area, a lot of the development patterns are mixed and industrial uses are prominent in this area. And if we look at it tomorrow for our future land use plan, much of the characteristics are already established, and it's proposing that these uses are maintained in that direction. Our next finding is that the design of the planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on the adjacent properties. The property is currently connected by sidewalks, and its surrounding uses include beverage distributions and other commercial and manufacturing uses along Schreiber Way. And this kind of illustrates the previous actions that have been brought forward through the planning process. And a couple of zone changes. The special use permit SP 612 is Trickster's Brewing, and that was all done within the last few years. There are some additional special uses that are in the area, and then there is also a zone change request for the Meadow Ranch area as well. And the subject property is outlined in the highlighted area. So. The design of the facility is compatible with adjacent uses and properties. It's already existing. It's a current site in the manufacturing district, and this is a site photo from Schreiber facing kind of southeast. The current zoning is manufacturing, which allows for the manufacturing of their product. And then also the land use for the subject property is manufacturing, and it's consistent with the request for that. And then our last finding is the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. The following are some department comments. And water said that there should be sufficient water for the project. Wastewater does not have any comments or conditions at this time. Stormwater had mentioned that it was previously addressed at the time of the initial development, and since there isn't going to be any exterior development on this property, that they wouldn't need to do stormwater improvements for that. No additions or alterations for the roadway adjoining the subject property would be required as part of this project. And finally, the traffic volumes from the site would be insignificant and easily accommodated by the adjacent roadways. So no improvements were required there. Fire said that it will be reviewed prior to final recommendations at building permit, and they have to follow those with their building permit process. So, staff does not have any recommendations at this time. There were notices that were mailed on July the 25th to the surrounding property owners. Some of the comments were received and forwarded to the commission for your review regarding the project. And the alternatives that you have today before you with this project is that you must consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And there is a findings worksheet that's attached in your staff report. I'd entertain any questions that you might have regarding this project.
Commissioner Ing?
Lori, a question just to kind of clarify. I've got a number of the email responses that you mentioned. And some of these seem to be like they're taking exception to the manufacturing aspects of this. For example, talking about trucks showing up and the noise of manufacturing and odors that would come from taking apples and vinegar and making them into alcohol, truck engines, and that sort of thing. So I think, from my understanding, as maybe for all of us in the room, this is really about the special use permit aspect, to have this little tasting room by right, correct me if I'm wrong, by right, they could go in and do their manufacturing operation with no hearing whatsoever. They could go straight to building permit with that and do that, correct?
Commissioner Ingalls, that is correct. Within this zoning district, they are allowed to do manufacturing.
So really, the aspect, again, tonight is not whether they're making apple cider stuff or the trucks coming and going or pumps and bins and things whirling away, manufacturing, because that manufacturing zone has been there for a long, long time. It's really about this ability to have this little tasting room.
It's
correct?
Correct, Commissioner Ingalls.
Okay.
It's the on-site and off-site beverage consumption, so that they can sell their product and somebody can purchase it at their facility and try it at their facility.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Are there
Commissioner
not
Woodruff?
some other companies that are doing the same thing in that area? Is there not a winery and a brewery
Correct.
and so forth that have tasting rooms?
Yes, there is a brewery a couple of sites down from this, Trickster's Brewery, that was part of a special use permit process, and there we go, SP 612. It's a few properties away from them, and it's a similar use. The wine cellars use, I think, is directly adjoining the property. I did note in the staff report that the Coeur d'Alene Cellars is permitted to sell their wine to customers that attend a wine tasting event, and that's why you don't see the special use permit identified on this map, because they associated it as an accessory use. The applicants here today are applying for the special use permit so that they do not have to have an event. They can hold open hours for people to come into their tasting room is.
And what is the SP6? Is that at any time or just special events?
It will be, people can, members of the public can come into the operation as, their hours allow for. So they can come and go without a special event.
But the winery is just special events, and that was in their special use permit?
The winery, actually, it's an accessory use to the manufacturing district, so they weren't required to go to have the special use. But in order to have it open for the public to be able to come and go during their hours, a special use permit for the on and off-site beverage is required for this.
Very good, thank you.
Commissioner Ward?
Thank you. I have a real quick question as well. Because this is an existing building, it's already gone through the process of approval to have everything put in place, including exterior lighting and parking, and all that's been addressed, because, again, the building already exists. Nowhere in this special permit application process can they change any of that during the special application process, or...
As far as lighting and parking standards,
is that
isn't a condition that the commission would put on the special use permit?
So the parking is driven by our city code, so that's probably not subject to change. You're going to, if they wanted to do a more intensive use that required additional parking, they'd either have to find more parking somewhere and build it, or they couldn't do the use. So the use is going to be driven by the amount that they can park there. Lighting, if you wanted to have a condition on lighting or something to that effect, you would have to have some testimony or something that highlights a deficiency in one of the findings that you can't make a finding on. So if one of the, let me give you for instance, so B8B, the design planning of the site is or is not compatible with location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. If you got significant testimony or testimony saying that this use, because of its obnoxious lighting, is going to cause problems for an adjacent use, such that you couldn't make a condition of approval, you could then have a condition saying, we're going to condition this approval on you doing something different on lighting. It's kind of tricky, but it can be done.
Okay.
If that made sense.
It does, thank you.
Right, and just for your information, the applicant did provide information about parking that's within the staff report, just to make sure that it's been satisfied. But like Warren said, it will come up at building permit, and they have to meet that at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, staff. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Now we have the applicant of Summit Cider Company. please come to the podium and I'll swear you in since this is a quasi-judicial. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
Yes.
And please state your name.
Davin Shostrom, Summit Cider.
How are you?
Doing well. Many of the questions have already been answered because they've already been presented to planning, but I'll just give you a little background of what myself and my partner Jason Fletcher are planning to do there, just to give you some additional information. We're both local business owners, long-term residents of Coeur d'Alene, and we're planning to make cider at that location and have a small little tasting room there. So yes, there will be apples brought in, crushed, and made into cider there, similar to the wine process. But it's a very small location, 1,900 square foot. We're starting this business, pretty much from the ground up. So we're not talking about giant tanks outside and huge processes. This is a very small little business. We're planning to open the fall of this year. And really the reasons we picked out this building is because it fit in with what was around it. Wineries directly next door. Tricksters is right down the road. So there'll be wine, cider, and beer is what we were hoping in a small manner. So in between all those businesses is also Odom Corporation, which is a distributor of alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages. That's where most of the truck traffic comes from, which I've noticed on that road, so I don't think traffic is a problem. To describe the tasting room, it's very small. There'll be less than 20 chairs in there. It'll probably be closer to 16 when it's all said and done. It'll be open on a partial schedule. My partner and I both have full-time jobs. We'll be there at night and on the weekends to open it. So we're not opening the Iron Horse in that location. It's a small little tasting room where people can come and try our product. So the products will be mostly just our ciders. We may have a local beer from the places down the street. Besides that, it's pretty straightforward. We think it conforms to the comprehensive plan. I both looked at the previous comprehensive plan and this current, and it seems to conform well to that use as well as what is currently adjacent to it and right down the street. So that's all I have. I'm available for questions.
Any questions?
Is your primary business the retail and the tasting room or the manufacturing?
It will probably be mostly manufacturing. Eventually, we're starting so small that we'd like to have a little of both, probably 50-50 to begin with. But if you saw this location, you'd realize how small it is. And
But in the tasting room, you said you're also going to have beer and wine?
Correct. Just for the people that do not like cider. And that would probably be...
What's the definition of a tasting room?
I don't know the definition of tasting room. Someone would come in...
What's the difference between a tasting room and a tavern or a bar?
A tasting room, I would say people come in and try a small sampler of all the different ciders we have. And if they like one of them, they would probably order a glass of the one they like. That's what I consider a tasting room. If they don't like any of them, they'll leave. Similar to how wineries work. A lot of wineries are that way. And if they do like our cider...
I think I asked the question how it relates. To me, a tasting room is you go in there and they manufacture certain products. You go in there and say, gee, I like this one, so I'm going to buy a bottle or case, however you buy it. And the tasting room is to get a taste of what's going on and to make a decision whether you want to buy a bottle or a case, however you sell it. But it sounds to me if you're going to have both your cider and wine and beer, and I assume you're not selling wine and beer, you're wholesale or in large quantities.
No, we're not producing either of those.
Yeah, and so it just strikes me as more like I don't know if tavern's the right word or not. I mean, And certainly don't have anything against taverns, but I was sort of enthused about this because the taste room, you got 3 different manufacturers, you have 3 different taste rooms. I can see where, it's got a little growth there.
But if we stop producing it there, we're not going to have a bar there, to be more specific.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Ingalls?
Yes, ma'am. Some of the mailed-in comments I see have questions on what would be the hours of operation envisioned there. Or I assume, to turn it around, they're asking it as a question, but I assume there's a concern there. And if it was a tavern, it would be 2 in the morning, I guess, would be by state law, I think. But what's the anticipation for operations?
We don't have any specific plans on what our hours will be, but I don't anticipate them being like a normal bar or tavern going late into the night. There may be some events that we have that would go a little later, but I don't anticipate Monday through Saturday morning at 2 a.m., that type of operation. It'll be very limited. Similar to the winery next door. Weekends, nights, things like that.
A little speculative question here. I don't know how to ask it other than this way. If you chose to follow the neighbor's process, the wine tasting or what, then you wouldn't have to come before us, if I understand correctly.
That would be special events is what you're talking about.
Would that kill your project?
Probably, yeah.
Because I think it's pretty neat. And God knows I've been to enough taverns in my life. I don't have anything against taverns. But you have a manufacturing, you have a little tasting room there. I think that's really neat. You got 3 of them in a row with this. My issue is it broadens it when it becomes more than just your product that you're going to be serving there, and that's what I'm fighting through in my head right now.
Well, to give you an example, another local brewery in town I used to go to, and I can't drink beer because of food allergies, so I would just sit there and talk to them. Couldn't test their product. Well, they brought in a cider, and now I can sit there and have a cider with them. If somebody came into my cider location and they don't like cider, I would like to be able to sell them something. And why not sell them a glass of wine from a producer next door or trickster next door or something like that? Yeah.
I'm good.
No more questions? Okay. So we will continue on then. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just saw that storm and thought about my dog outside.
Up in the trees around your house.
Sorry. Now we'll go to folks that signed up, and I have Jason Fletcher. Would you like to speak? Okay, and you are in favor? I have Bruce English, neutral, and would you like to speak?
I would.
Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
I do.
And please state your name.
Bruce English.
Thank you.
We live directly above this project. We are concerned with the hours of operation because our bedroom looks right down into this project. We're concerned that if that tasting room ends up outdoors, that'll bring music. Hours of operation is a concern. We're not particularly against the project. We're just against what might happen there after 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. We have a nice relationship with the folks that own the wine company there.
when they have wedding receptions or parties, they end them at 9:30 or 10. That's acceptable. We don't have a problem with that. But if we open this to the possibility of something going until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I don't know about you folks, but I don't like to stay up that late. So that's a big concern for us. I emailed in also noise of trucks. If they were as good, if they become as good of neighbors as the wine folks are, more power to them. I think it's a good project. The beer folks over here on SP 612, they have no outdoor tasting. They run regular office hours, and they're quite a ways away from where we live. So, is there anything else that I'm missing? I think that's it. Anything that I can maybe answer?
Any questions?
Just reaffirm whatever, however the wine thing is set up, that is not an intrusion on your bedroom or your privacy. That works pretty well.
It does work good, and I think it's because of Kimmer Gates. She's a good neighbor, and she runs a nice operation, and she's quiet, and they do have receptions there occasionally, but they cease them early enough that it doesn't really become a problem for us. We're a little concerned. I just heard, and I'm neutral because I didn't know enough about the project to be in favor or against it, and that's one of the reasons we're here tonight, is to find out. I do take a little exception to whether if they're going to be serving beer and wine there also. That does smack of a bar or a tavern. If we go to Latah Creek and in the valley and we go to their tasting room, they give you a little bit of this and a little bit of that and you leave, great. If you sit there and drink a bottle, maybe not so great. So, thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to talk.
Thank you. Thomas, Thomas, how do I say your last name? Yauberg. You're in favor, and would you like to speak?
I might say a few things, not too much.
Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
Yes.
And please state your name again.
Thomas Yauberg.
Thank you.
I just want to note a couple things contrary to what was said. Coeur d'Alene Cellars, I believe, because we've done it, we just go down there during daylight hours and go inside and taste, and it's not a formal invitation, it's just open. So they have a tasting room that's open normal hours during the day, for what I know. And that's basically it. It was sort of talked about a little differently early on, so that's all I really had to say.
Okay. Thank you. Would anyone else like to testify that did not sign up? Okay, then it's time for your rebuttal, if you would. All right. Jason, you've been sworn in, so you may proceed. Oh, you haven't because you didn't speak. That's right. Will you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God? Thank you, and state your name again, please.
Jason Fletcher.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify a few small items. This concern of us turning this little place into a bar. First of all, if we were going to open a bar, this is a really bad place for it, especially if we're going to be operating those types of hours. The idea was to create our product, but then give an alternative to, say, like, I'm a big brewery fan. I meet my dad at breweries. My mom won't go because they don't serve wine. So, that type of an approach. Our business model, I think, the way we see this running is very consistent with the breweries that are emerging here in town. There's 2 new ones. There's 2 more on the way. We think cider done with that type of a model makes a lot of sense. So if you look at the breweries that are here, they run limited hours. They're opened by members of our community who have, jobs and started this as a hobby and that are moving forward and trying to make a business out of it. That's really what our goal is to do. I think if you look at the site maps, our proximity to the adjoining neighborhood or the adjacent neighborhood is misleading. For one thing, our building is almost 50% below ground on the backside. There's a probably 30-foot deep grove of trees. If you're standing in front of our place, you might be able to see the roofs of the homes behind us, but that's all. They're elevated well above our building. I would think it would be hard to imagine any use that we would have that would be as disruptive as the manufacturing type use that the zoning is already in place for. There could be a metal shop there or, something that could create a lot of noise, have a lot of traffic, generate a lot more disruption than we would ever envision doing. And then the other thing that I would say as far as the sellers, Coeur d'Alene sellers use, to expand on what Davin said as far as if special events would be something that would work for us, our place is just not big enough. We wouldn't be able to facilitate, say, a wedding party or, any other type of coordinated special event when we're seating something in the sub-20 occupants.
Jason, I have a question. Do you anticipate any outdoor type of activities, or do you have a space for that?
We would potentially have a small space for it, and that's something that I would mention in response to the gentleman who spoke earlier, is that Tricksters actually does have outdoor seating. They have a pretty substantial area. We don't have a current plan for outdoor. We've talked to, we've begun our pre-application process with the building department and the other departments, and we're aware of what it would entail for us to do that. The facility as it is now, it's a completed building.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to extend too far beyond, I can't remember the exact number, but too far beyond what our expected number of seating is, there would be some costly upgrades required for us, like additional bathrooms, and so
Right.
I would certainly wouldn't preclude us being able to have some sort of outdoor seating, but we don't have that as part of our plan currently.
Right. Are there any questions by, go ahead, Commissioner Engels?
I do have a question, if I could. And you raise an interesting irony, I guess, where as a manufacturing zone, by right, someone could move into that building with a metal shop, as you say in your example, and run that 24/7. But that's by right. And we heard from Mr. English that he's concerned not about the manufacturing aspect so much, but about the special use permit aspect, which is the tasting room and the hours there, and sometimes alcohol affects behaviors and things get a little crazy and things happen. So as a safeguard, I guess what he's looking for is some kind of a bounds, not to the manufacturing part of this, but to the wine tasting or the tasting part of it, just so he has assurance that this thing isn't going to get out of hand. So with that, assuming we could add a condition to this special use permit that those operations cease at 10 o'clock at night, what would that mean for you folks?
What would that mean for us? I don't know that it would impact.
Could you be successful with that limitation?
I would think so. I mean, I would prefer not to have a limitation like that put on us, but I don't think that that destroys our plan.
You don't think that would destroy your plan?
Correct. I don't think that it's necessary. I don't think that, given our location and the proximity to our neighbors, that it's a worthwhile penalty to put on us. But I don't think that it would make it so that we couldn't be successful.
Well, I don't think I'll speak for myself. I don't think we want to penalize anybody. I think what we want to do is try to make it some type of a use that is compatible with the area. And I think I'll speak for myself in this, but I think the other commissioners feel the same way, is we want to encourage business. We want to be business friendly. We want to have manufacturers. So from my standpoint, it's not a penalty. It's just being compatible with what your neighbors are doing and what is in the area. And as it's said here, that wine tasting, it can be used without a special permit because the function is an accessory to the operation. Yours is not accessory to the is not an accessory to the operation. It would be if you just served whatever you manufactured, cider. I have no more questions.
All right. Anyone else
Commissioner
have any more
Bowlby,
questions?
I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to argue with you. I'm trying to express.
Oh, no. I mean, it's in the commission's hands, so.
If I might, there's been a question about the potential for a condition for hours of operation. I want to speak to that a little bit. Commissioner Ingalls noted that the manufacturing uses could, essentially, you could run 3 shifts at that location. Mm-hmm. The uses could be run outside. This isn't a light manufacturing zone where the manufacturing has to be indoors. This is straight-up manufacturing, so you could run manufacturing uses outdoors 24 hours a day. Right. As unique to this property, when Meadow Ranch was approved in 2006, there was a discussion about this potential because of its proximity to the manufacturing zone and also to the transfer station and to the city's solid waste, or not solid waste, but excuse me, we've got our compost facility next door. And so as a condition of approval, the Commission and Council required a notice and a disclosure be placed in the CC&R so that when anybody bought a unit in Meadow Ranch, when anybody rented a unit in Meadow Ranch, that they signed off acknowledging that the manufacturing park and those other uses I mentioned may produce noise, odor, and dust that the residents may find offensive. And again, they were required both as renters and purchasers to sign off acknowledging that, because the zone change that allowed the residences to occur here essentially created this potential problem. And then later in 2008, we made a change to some of our performance standards to address this problem as well. Given all of that, I'm not sure, especially since the testimony on this point was fairly limited to a concern that this might be a problem rather than testimony that it is a problem, when you've got 2 uses that have essentially the same characteristics next door, mm-hmm. that don't have those limitations. I'm not sure that that type of a condition would be warranted.
To add to what Warren stated, I was on the Planning Commission at the time, and I do believe the Planning Commission denied Meadow Ranch initially because of the conflict. And I'm not positive on that, but I believe we did, and it went to the City Council, and that's where it was approved. But our concerns were exactly what was just stated, what Warren had indicated, because of residential, very nice residential, by the way, up against our industry area, and also the compost, and there are some odors from that. And I remember sitting on the Planning Commission at the time and being a part of that process, and that was just exactly what was stated. So I would have to concur with our legal counsel in that this is an industrial zone, and this is what this is for. And if in fact you were notified as such from what has just been stated, I do sympathize, but I think that the area and the Meadow Ranch was forewarned that that's what this is zoned for, and this is the potential when you moved into those homes, which are beautiful homes. So I would have to feel that I'm not concerned with what your project is, and I believe you'll be good neighbors. You'll want to be good neighbors, and I don't think that the folks that live above you will be affected. So that's my 2 cents. Go ahead, Chair. Go ahead.
Warren, if I could, Warren, if I could take one more shot at that, though. And I guess what I'm struggling with, I think a lot of us are going to struggle with here, is we're saying, well, this is a noisy manufacturing zone.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you knew that when you moved in, your CC&R said that and all that. There's inherent potential for conflict, and I understand that. So, no need for a condition that someone testified that they'd be concerned about. I guess if we're saying that this is really inherent with a manufacturing zone, why is it that our code requires a special use permit at all then? And I think as I wrestle with it, the sound is something just grinding away, metal shop, metal shop, metal shop, versus, again, the potential. I don't think it's going to happen, but the potential that, sound we've learned, it can be very funny. It's the unusual sound that trips you up in the middle of the night, not the constant drone sound and whatnot. So, just by virtue that, I guess I come back to you and say, well, why would this require a special use permit at all then, if that's the case?
In this instance, the irony is it's largely to protect the manufacturing uses. This is a manufacturing zone first and foremost, and so you require uses that are going to have elements of commercial or other uses to conform to that use. And so you require a special use permit so that an applicant that might make some sense in a location like that, an applicant like this, where it's got large manufacturing elements in it, but also may have an element of commercial use, comes in and makes sure that it fits in with the manufacturing uses. So that's the reason why we have a special use permit in this instance. That's not universally true, but in this instance, that's the case. And then I think if you think about the evidence that you have before you tonight, again, sort of going back to the last hearing, you get to make your decision based on the evidence you have in the record. The evidence you have tonight is largely positive. You have one person testifying that they're concerned that this might be a problem. As we've talked about in some of our training, a concern that there might be a problem really isn't evidence of a problem. It's an opinion. It's hard to base a condition on an opinion when there's not a fact that's basing that up.
Sort of puts you in a bind, though, doesn't it? Because maybe the opinion is right, but once it's granted. But my question is a little different. What is the definition of an event?
Yeah, that's a long and tortured discussion, but frankly, you may see in the near future the winery in for a special use permit. There's discussion of that, so it's not a very bright line. An event essentially something that's scheduled that doesn't happen, 9 to 5, day in, day out, where you're open for operation. That's your business model. An event is where somebody essentially rents out the facility, no different than renting one of the facilities in City Park. You rent it on occasion, you come in, have your event, you're on your way. It's a blurry distinction, and at some point, if your events are successful enough that you're doing it all the time, you're looking at potentially having a special use permit.
I guess that's my issue is an accessory to the product or special. And quite frankly, this didn't cross my mind when the trickster came up because I just assumed, and I know that's not, and I know what assumed is how you spell it, that it was a tasting like affair. My issue, if the adjacent property owner and this group came in both asking for special use, I'd look at it a little differently. But right now, we have a special use in industrial area, and I think that we can accommodate, it could be accommodated if it's accessory to the production. And so,
Sure, but the applicant has every right to come in and ask for the special use permit.
I'm
and
not
we get to-
questioning that.
We have to judge the application based on the evidence and our code that we have. And again, your evidence tonight is fairly limited. You have one person that testified neutrally about the potential for noise, when by right, they could go make a whole lot more noise in an industrial area than they're going to make.
and how many people spoke
allowed.
in favor of it? Just the applicant, right?
Again, but
No, I mean, it just, I don't know how you weigh
There were 4.
how you we just have one person speaking this way, and we have, one person speaking the other way. I don't know if we.
I really think that, for myself, that it will be a neighborhood thing, and I do believe Meadow Ranch is a beautiful project. I think that you two gentlemen will work with Meadow Ranch, and since it is a manufacturing, and that is in the CCNRs, I think that's the best way to look at this, because that's my gut feeling. I can't vote, so...
Can we condition it on this? in some
I
fashion?
think that we'd have to leave that up to Warren as far as the conditioning, but go ahead, Commissioner Ingles.
I think we've been counseled that wouldn't really be appropriate, but I think I was going to say there's value in this hearing process that, the neighbors and the applicant and
Yeah.
folks that are going to go forward had valuable conversation here tonight.
Right,
And
right.
that's probably what happened with the wine cellar and else. That's part of the value of having a hearing process.
It could be. I do see a gentleman who would like to speak, but we have closed public testimony. It's unusual to open it up again. Warren, what would you say to that?
So if you were to open it up for additional testimony, you're going to have to essentially allow the applicant, to come back and rebut anything new that is
Okay.
heard.
Okay.
So that's would be your process.
All right. I guess I would ask my fellow commissioners if you would want to have this gentleman speak. I don't want anyone not to feel that they haven't spoken, but that's the that's our process.
Madam Chair, I have no problem with hearing more testimony and having the applicant come back and rebut it.
Okay. Okay.
Is there someone that wanted to?
Yes, there's a gentleman in the back that raised his hand. He would have to sign the form, and I definitely want to make sure that people feel they've been heard. So I will let the applicant.
I'm okay with it, too.
Are you all right? Good. And then you can come back and speak again. Thank you. So, sir, would you please sign that form? I think it's important that everyone speak.
We've got to wait for this storm to clear anyway.
Well, I'm worried about my dog. She's outside. Poor thing. Come up to the podium, sir, and I'll swear you in. Go ahead and, yes. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
Yes.
And what's your name, sir?
Dick Lind.
Thank you.
Live in Meadow Ranch, right above this.
Uh-huh.
Two things. When the winery has their parties and they have a DJ, you can hear that thing clear to the next block. Now, you're saying industrial. The noise from an industry, that's one thing. But if they have noise from a party, that's not industry. That's my point. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
You would ask me something else, but these guys usually quit at 10 o'clock with their band, but I mean, it is loud. The sound goes right up the bank. And really loud. You could hear them talk, everything they say. So that's a separate issue, I think, from the industrial of making their cider. That noise is one thing, but the party noise is another. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, then the testimony is now closed, and we have the applicant coming back up.
I'll be brief. The
Thank you.
winery was put in 2002, and they've
Correct.
operated on the same footprint, producing the same wine, having the same events. And I believe that development was put in 2008, and they had to go through extra things to get that done. So I would hate for a business that was put in there 6 years before that in the use that was designed for be affected by something that was put in 6 years later, and we're forewarned. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. My fellow commissioners have a decision to be made.
Comment real quick, if I could.
Yes, please.
Warren,
Commissioner Ingalls.
your point to me is, where I say, well, if these two zones, the manufacturing zone and Meadow Ranch is PUD, R12 PUD, R17 PUD rather. There's a notion there that they as they came to the game late, that they recognize there's noise there. This is no different, I guess, than people that want to develop around the airport, and there's acknowledgement that there's noise there already. And in this case, what you're saying, kind of the special use permit is kind of ironically turned around. It's almost to say, as a warning to the special use, in this case the tasting room, it's a warning to them that you're going to have a tasting room in a noisy area. Almost, you're putting an acknowledgement. You're putting a house by a runway or something like that. So,
Well, I am of the opinion that the special use permit in the manufacturing zone is not appropriate this time. That there are ways they can have tasting of their product. May not be to their liking, but there are ways it can be done without a special use. It is, in fact, zone manufacturing. So I do not see the need to grant a special use permit in this case.
Commissioner Ward?
Warren, I have kind of a question, comment, seeking your response for some clarity. Approval or denial, regardless, manufacturing can happen tomorrow
Yes.
in that area because it's zoned that way, and by rights, anything to do with manufacturing can happen, again, starting tomorrow.
That's
Is that
correct.
any sort of special application use permit process or application for anything else? Correct.
That's correct. You could have, in fact, you have manufacturing uses that sit out there now that operate, run trucks in and out. Those uses are allowed by right, and whether it's 75 decibels of manufacturing noise versus 75 decibels of a party, it's still 75 decibels. It's hard to get away from the fact that we allow by right very noisy uses in manufacturing zones. And here we've approved at least one special use permit with the exact same use within the last couple of years. In this same location, it would be very difficult, I think, to sustain a denial.
Thank you.
so
Commissioner Ingalls?
Thank you, I'm sorry. I think there's going to be concerns between Meadow Ranch and this manufacturing zone that's already built in, if you will. For consistency, there's a special use 6-12. There's some concern, I guess, with potential for noise. But, I think the majority of that is the trucks and the manufacturing itself. I think the small 16-seat little tasting room thing doesn't, pose a great threat to noise that's not already there and inherent in the manufacturing. I tend to support it. I would feel a little bit more comfortable if I thought the tasting room was going to shut down at 10 o'clock at night. But I'm more inclined to support this.
Yep, I agree.
Do we have anyone who would like to make the findings?
Well, I'll give it a shot. A motion that I would make would be to approve this special use permit based on the following findings in order: that this matter came before the Planning Commission on August 12, 2014, and there being present a person requesting approval of item SP 5-14, a request for a food and beverage on-off-site consumption special use permit in a manufacturing zoning district. Applicant is Summit Cider Company on a 1.43 plus or minus acre parcel located at 3884 North Schreiber Way, Unit 201 in Commerce Park of Coeur d'Alene, Second Edition. Findings would be to adopt B1 through B8 pertaining to the noticing and so forth, and adopting finding B8A that the proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan, primarily that the special use permit is located in a manufacturing zone, and that this activity would enhance business and diversity and provide, as the comprehensive plan calls for, a mix of quality professional trade, business, and service industries in that location, that the design and planning of the site is compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on the adjacent property based on the size and the number of seats envisioned in this small tasting room location. The design layout and so forth is similar to other special use permits approved in that location. Finding B8C, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will be adequately served by existing streets, public utilities, and services. Therefore, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that the request of Summit Cider Company for a special use permit as described in the application should be approved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Findings made by Commissioner Engel, seconded by Ward. And Shanna, do you want to do a roll call, please?
Ingalls?
Yes.
Lutrip?
No.
Ward?
Yes.
So it passes, what, 2-1? Now, Warren, there's no, if it goes through us right now, they don't have to go to the city council, or do they?
There's an appeal to city council, but this is a final decision unless it's appealed. Once the notice of
Okay.
decision is issued, anyone can request an appeal within 10 days of the notice of decision.
And that's what I wanted to give to the neighbors, so if there is a process, a continuing process. But I would really encourage everyone to get together and talk, and I know it'll be a successful business, and I know the neighbors will be happy. Let's just put that together that way, and good luck. So I believe, since that is through, we have no more hearings tonight, but I do know that there is another comment that
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to, and
Commissioner
wanted to
Lutrip
wait
wanted to
after
comment.
after our business is essentially over, but before adjournment, I just want to acknowledge, and I'm sorry that Mr. Jordan isn't here, because I know he was a graduate of Harding School. And John, I don't know if you were or not.
Indeed.
Okay, and I just, that one of our class leaders in Harding School, Judy Libby, she was also in charge of the all-class reunion for Coeur d'Alene High School this last month, and it was attended by over 400 Coeur d'Alene High School graduates, myself included. And I just want to acknowledge to the community what a great high school Coeur d'Alene High School is, and I'm sure Lake City is also, but as our the neighbor to my right can attest. But an all-class reunion was pretty doggone neat. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Lutrip. Do we have anyone who would like to adjourn the meeting?
Move adjourned.
I was going to say, I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you for attending, everyone.